Greetings, fellow lords and ladies. Well, a look at Game of Thrones Season 4 now continues on with the episode The Mountain and the Viper. Beginning in the north, Ramsay Snow sends Reek, first to resume his former identity of Theon Greyjoy, to treat with the Ironborn garrison holding the northern fortress of Mo Caelan, barring the armies of House Bolton from returning to the north. Theon rides into the fortress to find corpses lying everywhere from constant attacks, and diseases running rampant. The Ironborn remaining are sick, under-equipped, and outnumbered. The garrison commander, Ralph Kenning, rebuffs the offer made by Ramsay of safe passage in exchange for surrender, and clearly thinks Theon to be an impostor, but he is cut down by one of his men, who accepts on behalf of the soldiers. The Ironborn surrender to Ramsay, but he has them killed and flayed regardless. In the aftermath, Ramsay meets with his father and presents him with the Greyjoy banner that was flying over the fortress. In recognition, Roose presents Ramsay with a degree of legitimization, making him an official member of House Bolton. Delighted at the knowledge that he will succeed his father as Warden of the North, Ramsay accompanies Roose's army as it approaches its final destination, the ruins of Winterfell. Dun dun dun. In Molestown, a whore is arguing with Gilly about her baby, who woke her up during the night. Meanwhile, wildlings, including Tormundsteer and Ygritte, attack the town, killing everyone in their path. Ygritte discovers Gilly hiding with her baby, but urges them to keep quiet, sparing their lives. Aww. At the Wall, news from Molestown has arrived at Castle Black, where Zen worries about Gilly, blaming himself for bringing her to the town instead of keeping her with him at Castle Black. Grit is angry at them, cowering in the castle instead of helping their brothers in neighboring towns. Jon Snow says they can't go out to fight against the wildlings, as that is exactly what they want. Piper try to comfort Sam by saying she might be alive and hiding if she has survived worse situations, such as living with Craster, making a long march to the Wall, and even surviving a White Walker. This gives Sam hope that Gilly and her baby may have survived. Jon knows they have a bigger problem. If Molestown's been destroyed, Castle Black is next, and the few Black brothers who remain are outnumbered 1,000 to 1 by Mance Rayder's army. Ed knows that if the wildlings don't kill them all, there is even worse behind them that will finish the job, and asks whichever last man of the group is still alive at the end to burn the others, as he doesn't want to come back after he is dead. Anyway, in Marine, as Grey Worm is swimming with some other Unsullied outside Marine, he notices Missandei and a number of other women bathing naked downstream. She spots him looking at her and turns his gaze, standing up slowly for him to see her before finally covering herself. Later, Daenerys asks whether Missandei thinks he was spying on her. She says no, and Daenerys mentions that Dothraki have no taboos against nudity or public lovemaking. Of course, Missandei is not Dothraki, but she says it doesn't matter, as Grey Worm isn't interested in her. None of the Unsullied desire women. Missandei says he was interested, though, surprisingly to both of them. Daenerys inquires whether, when a slave was castrated, the masters take all of it, both the pillar and the stones. Missandei says she doesn't know, to which Daenerys asks if she's ever wondered. Thoughtful, Missandei confirms that she has. In Dany's audience chamber, Grey Worm comes to apologize to Missandei, but she tells him he doesn't need to. He hopes he didn't frighten her, and she says he did not. Addressing her in the common tongue, he tells her the lessons she gives are precious to him. Gently correcting his vocabulary, she notes that she doesn't remember teaching him the word precious. Grey Worm tells her that Jorah taught it to him. She asks whether he remembers his birth name, and Grey Worm says he remembers nothing. She asks if he remembers when they cut him, and he shakes his head no. She tells him she's sorry that they did that to him, and when Grey Worm asks her why, she says it's a terrible thing to do to a boy. Grey Worm counters that, had the masters not cut him, he would never have been unsullied. He never would have been freed, chosen to lead them, and met her. Missandei is visibly moved by this. Grey Worm apologizes once again, and she stops him while he turns to leave, telling him she is glad he saw her. He tells her he's glad as well. As Sir Barristan Selmy watches the Unsullied taking the bodies of the crucified masters down outside Marine, a small boy approaches him, giving him a scroll bearing the seal of the hand. He reads its contents slowly in consternation. He confronts Sir Jorah. The document is a royal pardon signed by King Robert Baratheon. Barristan surmises Jorah spied on Daenerys in exchange for the pardon. Jorah begs to be allowed to speak with her privately, but Barristan tells him that he will never be alone with her again. In an audience before her, As Ethan Daenerys demands an explanation, and Jorah says it's a plot by Tywin Lannister to divide them. Dany counters that the pardon was signed the year they met. Asking whether he claims the pardon was forged, Jorah admits that it was not. He still confesses to giving Varys information on Daenerys' activities in Essos. Daenerys angrily says that his telling them of her pregnancy by Khal Drogo led to her near poisoning at the hands of a wine merchant. Jorah then protests that his actions stopped her from being poisoned, but Daenerys says this was only because he knew it might be coming. Jorah begs for her forgiveness, but Daenerys rebuffs him, saying he betrayed her, selling her secrets to the man she holds responsible for the death of her family. She spares his life, however, and gives him a day to leave Meereen. She warns that if he is seen in the city after that, his head will be thrown into Slaver's Bay. Jorah is last seen riding from Meereen on a horse. Aww. Meanwhile, in the Vale of Arryn, Peter Baelish is testifying before a tribunal consisting of Lord Jon Royce, Lady Anya Waynwood, and Sir Vance Corbray. The lords are suspicious of Lysa Arryn's death, which occurred so soon after her marriage. Baelish has been attempting to spin the death as a suicide, but the lords don't believe him, given Lysa's devotion to her son. They rebuff Littlefinger's explanation in favor of speaking with the only other witness, his niece, Elaine. After confirming that Baelish can stay for her testimony, Sansa reveals her true identity and relates the tale of her captivity and escape from King's Landing. She continues, truthfully telling Lysa's mental instability, jealousy, and death, changing only a few details. See, Littlefinger only kissed her on the cheek and Lysa threw herself through the moon door. Sansa breaks into tears and the lords are convinced, but while none of them are looking, she gives Littlefinger a stone-faced look. Later, Baelish visits Sansa and asks why she lied on his behalf. Sansa explains that she has no idea what Royce Corbray Waynwood would want from her if he were eliminated, but that she does know what it is he wants. Littlefinger seems impressed that she made a calculating decision, but attempts to cast doubt on her certainty by asking if she really knows what he wants. Later on, as Littlefinger and Robin prepare to depart on a tour of the Vale, a raven-haired Sansa accompanies them in a feather-black dress with a plunging neckline. At some point, before or after this event, Sandor Clegane and Arya Stark arrive at the Bloody Gate of the Eyrie and are informed of Lysa's death by Sir Donald Waynwood. The Hound stares in shock, while Arya begins laughing due to the irony. And finally, in King's Landing, in the last hours before his trial by combat, Tyrion and Jaime share a final drink at Tyrion's cell and reminisce about Orson Lannister, their simple-minded cousin who spent his days smashing beetles with a rock. Tyrion tells Jaime of how he used to observe Orson day after day in an attempt to understand his motives. At the end, he was never able to come to reach any understanding. Tyrion asks Jaime if he thinks Oberyn stands a chance, but Jaime's not optimistic. As the bell rings out to announce daybreak in the city, Jaime takes his leave, wishing his brother luck. Lannister guardsmen escort Tyrion to the arena, where a large crowd has assembled. He grows apprehensive to find a helmless Oberyn drinking and wearing very light armor, in comparison to his opponent, Sir Gregor Clegane, clad from head to foot in heavy armor and wielding a greatsword. Oberyn dismisses Tyrion's concerns, noting that he always drinks before a fight and favors speed over protection. As Gregor and his squire make their way to the arena, Ellaria becomes concerned, knowing that the Mountain is the biggest man she's ever seen, but remains confident that he will emerge triumphant. Grand Maester Pycelle steps into the arena and begins making a long-winded speech asking gods to favor the innocent before Tywin Lannister cuts him short and begins the trial by combat. Oberyn, after impressing the crowd with a display of acrobatic spear maneuvers, goes on the attack, stabbing out at Gregor and constantly moving out of the knight's reach, forcing Gregor to tire himself out at chasing his opponent. As he evades Gregor, Oberyn repeatedly taunts Gregor by constantly bringing up his part in the murder of his sister Aelio Martell and her children, and demanding a confession, only enraging Clegane further. As the fight progresses, Oberyn manages to seriously injure Gregor, stabbing him first in the chest, severing his Achilles tendon, then burying his spear in Gregor's stomach, pinning him to the floor. As Jaime and Tyrion exchange a relieved grin across the arena, a furious Oberyn circles the prone Gregor, demanding that before he dies, Gregor confesses to murdering Aelia and her children, raping Aelia, and that it was Tywin who gave the order. However, Oberyn stands too close to his seemingly defeated opponent, and Gregor manages to strip and seize him. Berserk with fury, Gregor grabs Oberyn by the throat and lifts him off the ground, smashing out most of his teeth with a single devastating punch. Climbing on top of Oberyn, Gregor finally admits For all to hear that he raped and killed Alia, and as he gouges Oberyn's eyes with his thumbs just before crushing the viper's skull between his hands, which he proclaims having done the same to his sister. As Hilaria screams in horror, a stun sign sweeps over the crowd. The short joyful moments for Tyrion and Jaime are shattered, as Tywin stands and proclaims that the will of the gods is clear. Tyrion is guilty and sentenced to death. Tyrion cannot even reply, shockingly staring in catatonic astonishment at Oberyn's skull-crushed corpse, as does Jaime. The only different reactions from Cersei, who stares at Oberyn's slaughtered body, listening to Tyrion's death sentence while smirking in vindication. Oh, you bitch. Well, anyway, let's take a look at some notes surrounding this episode. The title is a reference to Sir Gregor Clegane, known as the Mountain That Rides, or simply the Mountain for his immense size, and Prince Oberyn Martell, known as the Red Viper. This episode is actually the first time that Oberyn is called the Red Viper of Dorne on screen. The soundtrack playing for the credits is a rendition of the House Martell theme and Tyrion's theme. It did not appear on the official soundtrack release. Due to the Memorial Holiday in the United States on May 25th, there was a 2-week break between episodes 7 and 8 of Season 4. This episode marks the death of Oberyn Martell, but he is survived by his 8 daughters, collectively known as the Sand Snakes, whom we mentioned in Season 4, Episode 5, first of his name. Casting reports for Season 5 indicate that there are at least 3 of his daughters will be cast as recurring characters. Despite once again being a major setting, the era does not appear in the title sequence for this episode. By comparison, Winterfell made his first reappearance in this episode, yet has remained in the title sequence all season. Braavos and associated storyline remain in the title sequence but do not appear in the episode. When Tyrion observes that patricide is an example of how there is a word for every kind of killing, Jaime points out that cousin killing is an exception. Jaime killed their cousin Alton Lannister. Tyrion's sprawling discussion of Horsey Lannister smashing beetles has no counterpart in the books. The writers explained in the Inside episode featurette that their intention was that faced with his probable death, Tyrion's mind is wandering to question why seemingly random acts of brutality happen in the world. That is, the Orson smashing beetles as a sort of microcosm of this question. The scene is very similar to a famous one from the Stanley Kubrick film Paths of Glory, in which a condemned man sees the cognitive elements, "Tomorrow will be dead and I will be alive. I will have more contact with my wife and child than I will. I'll be nothing and I will be alive." His fellow prisoner then crushes the cockroach and says, "Now I've got the edge on him." While Benioff and Weiss didn't explicitly state that they were recalling this film, shortly afterwards they mentioned an interview about the battle scene for the very next episode, that they and the production team were fans of Paths of Glory and used it as a visual reference for certain war scenes, so the similarity is probably not coincidental. In the books, different slaver cities make eunuchs in different ways, all of which are actually public knowledge. The slave master of Yunkai remove a slave's testicles, but when the slave masters of Astapor make on Sully the cut of everything, the testicles as well as the shaft of the penis. Daenerys didn't know this when she first arrived, but Missandei has been living in Slaver's Bay for years working for a slave master who trains and sells Unsullied. Apparently the TV series made him more of a trade secret. Jorah argues that he tried to save Daenerys from the wine cellar, tried to poison her in Season 1, Episode 7, You Win or You Die, but she retorts his suspicions were raised because he knew an assassination attempt would be made soon. While Jorah wasn't directly responsible for what followed, this sparked a chain of events that greatly harmed Daenerys. If the assassination attempt hadn't been made, Khal Drogo would not have set out to invade Westeros. He would have taken a poisoned chest wound in Lazar. She then would have been betrayed by Mirri Maz Duur, resulting in the deaths of Drogo and their unborn child Rhaego. Daenerys says that Jorah spied on her for Robert Baratheon, the man who killed my father and stole my brother's throne. Robert didn't personally kill her father Aerys. Jaime the Kingslayer Lannister did, though Robert personally did kill her older brother Rhaegar. In the books, this line was actually the men who killed her father and took her brother Viserys' throne, referring to them collectively. Daenerys' line, the man, here is probably just a dialogue error, though it needs to be explained that she is simply so angry that she is speaking generally. This episode marks the introduction of several major vassal houses from the Vale for the first time, specifically House Royce, House Waynwood, and House Corbray. The actor who plays Jordan Royce, Rupert Vansittart, is no stranger to great medieval set pieces. He is well known for appearing in the 1984 film Braveheart as Lord Bottoms, the English lord who goes to Scotland and asserts the right of prima nocte first night over the local Scots, sparking off a Scottish rebellion. Sansa Stark explains to Lord Jon Royce that they met once before years ago when he stepped at Winterfell on his way to take his third son, Waymar Royce, to the Wall to join the Night's Watch. Waymar was in fact one of 3 Watch members who appeared in the very first scene of the TV series, in the prologue sequence from Winter is Coming, which Waymar was killed by a White Walker. In the books, Sansa recalls that she was infatuated with the handsome young man during his brief stay. Lord Royce mentions they grew up with Eddard Stark within the walls of the Eyrie itself, and went hunting with them many times. Eddard and Robert Baratheon briefly mentioned all the way back in Winter is Coming that they were both fostered as warriors by Jon Arryn, and both came to revere the man as a second father. That episode didn't explicitly explain that they were wards at Jon Arryn's castle, the Eyrie, where Eddard did indeed meet many current lords of the Vale when they were young men. In the books, the Valeers were divided by those who wanted to join Robb Stark's side in the war, those who wanted to remain neutral, and those who wanted to side with the Lannisters. Lysy kept them all restrained and neutral, because her secret plan with Littlefinger was to trick the Starks and Lannisters into fighting each other to exhaustion, so they could later turn on them both. Lord Jon Royce, however, was known as to be the staunchest pro-Stark supporter of the Vale Lords, due to his ties with the late Lord Eddard. The books actually do mention that Peter Baelish's direct male line great-grandfather was a common Silsar from Braavos. Peter's grandfather obtained a knighthood and founded House Baelish, but held no lands. Peter's father served with distinction in the War of the Nine-Penny Kings and managed to obtain some meager lands at the Fingers, technically rising in rank again, but only as the smallest of lords. As Lord Royce explains in this episode, Peter was an insignificant minor lord until Jon Arryn brought him to King's Landing, where due to his financial skill he rapidly rose to become Master of Coin. As Varys summed up Littlefinger in the Season 1 finale, Peter is a grasper from a minor house, with a major talent for befriending powerful men and women. At this point in the books, the vast majority of Westeros believes Arya Stark to be dead, while Bran and Rickon are also thought to have been killed by Theon. However, because Ramsay helped Blandon helped fake the deaths of the Stark boys alongside Theon, the Boltons are well aware of their survival, although the series still had him learn this information later through his deception of Theon. Sansa is the only lawful Stark child known to be alive, but absolutely no one other than Littlefinger is aware of her true identity. Though after revealing herself to 3 major Vale Lords, they promised to keep it a secret. Lords of Westeros cannot legitimize their own bastard children, but have to request it as a royal favor. The dialogue in this episode does not make it explicitly clear. Bruce Bolton actually had to obtain Ramsay's legitimization from King Tommen and the Lannisters as a reward for House Bolton's help in defeating the Starks. The letter which Roose hands Ramsay, however, has the wax seal of House Baratheon of King's Landing on it. Thus, there was no change of procedure in the TV version, and here Roose also had to obtain it as a royal decree. In the gift, it is said explicitly that the legitimization decree was issued by King Tommen. Ramsay's treatment of the Ironborn and Moat Cailin is the same as how he handled Ironborn who were occupying Winterfell. After settling in for a difficult siege, he offered the garrison safe passage to the sea in return for surrendering. They agreed, and one of them silenced their commander. Ramsay then promptly broke his word by not only killing them, but horrifically torturing them to death. In the books, there are great differences between the events. First, Ramsay also slaughtered the northern home garrison besieging Winterfell by turning on them in their own camps. Ramsay then personally killed Sir Roderick, where Roderick held open his hand. Roderick held up his open hand as a gesture of surrender. Ramsay cut off his arm at the elbow. Second, the Ironborn who occupied Winterfell did not make any deal of surrender with Ramsay. They had allowed him to enter, thinking correctly he is a friend, after watching his force slay the besiegers. Third, Ramsay did not flay any of the Ironborn, and so just kill them, along with some of the Stark household. Roose Bolton states that the North is bigger than the other 6 of the 7 kingdoms put together. Geographically this is true, but it is also very resource-poor, and hit the hardest by the years-long winters of their world. And it's neither the gold of the Westerlands nor the fertile fields of the Reach. The North is also one of the least populated of the 7 kingdoms. The North's vast size but desolate landscape is one of its strengths. Back in Season 1, Cersei advised Joffrey that the North is far too large for an outside forest to easily occupy. Thus, while the North is very large, there are not many people or resources in it. The World Defense Fire source book specified that while it is a common saying that the North makes up half of the land area of the Seven Kingdoms, researchers have made accurate geographical measurements and determined that it is really close to 1/3 of the total land area instead of 1/2. It is still by far the largest kingdom by land area. The scene of Sansa, Littlefinger, and the nobles from the Vale is based on two different scenes from A Feast for Crows. In the first scene, Nestor Royce comes to the Eyre to inquire about Lysa's death, accompanied by his son Albar and Sir Marwyn Belmore. Littlefinger company puts the blame on Marillion. Robin and Sansa support Littlefinger's version. Marillion is brought by Mord, severely battered and mutilated, and claims that he killed Lysa. Since the entire Vale hates Marillion, and the three guests were personally insulted by him, they are satisfied with Littlefinger's lies. It was very visible that Marillion did not confess of his free will. The second scene takes place some days later. Lord Yon Royce comes to the Eyrie, accompanied by Lady Anya Winewood and more nobles from the Vale. They do not come to inquire about Lysa's death, but to remove Littlefinger from his office as Lord Protector and take Robin to foster a runestone. Sansa remembers that Lord Yon saw her twice, at Winterfell and at King's Landing. She considers Sansa to reveal her identity and asks for his protection, but like in the show, she decides not to, reasoning that he never fought for her brother and had no reason to fight for her. Has no reason to fight for her. Lyanna looks at her closely and asks, "Do I know you, girl?" Sansa cannot bring herself to speak, and Nestor assures his cousin that she is Elaine Stone, Littlefinger's bastard daughter. Assembling whether Lord Yon recognizes Sansa or not. At dinner, Lord Yon and the other nobles make threats against Littlefinger, but he is unimpressed and manipulates them to let Robin stay under his care. In the above book scenes, Sansa and Littlefinger act as always. Sansa is frightened and passive, while Littlefinger acts cunningly and bracingly, putting the blame on the singer. He even goes that far to state that it was Io who killed her. In the show, however, Sansa and Littlefinger act totally out of character. Sansa suddenly full confidence, while Littlefinger largely fumbles for words. It is thought that the TV series would have Arya's name openly announced when she and Sandor reached the Bloody Gate. Littlefinger and Sansa used much more discretion, having her sneak into the Eyrie under an assumed name, because they were afraid that if anyone overheard that one of the Stark girls was in the Vale, the news would eventually be reported to the Lannisters. Strangely, this issue was never addressed again in Season 4, nor were there apparently any repercussions. Westeros.org's official review felt it was simply a plot hole, given that Arya spent the past 3 seasons keeping her real identity carefully guarded secret. Costume designer Michelle Clapton explained that the costume for Gregor Clegane had to be modified for the duel with Oberyn. In the novels, Gregor is a freakishly tall behemoth, a full 8 feet tall and weighing over 400 pounds, most of it dense muscle. Gregor in the novels wears heavy layers of armor that no normal warrior could hope to even lift, much less fight in. So the Season 1 costume was designed to include heavy armor layers. The costume was first used in Season 1, where Gregor was simply riding horse in a joust, but now it needs to be worn in a protracted and intense duel. The roles recast the Season 4 actor Halfbard Julius Bjornsson, but despite the fact that he's a professional strongman, officially ranked as the 3rd strongest man in the world, even he found it grueling to perform such extensive stunt work in the costume. He also became easily overheated. The heavy metal armor and the heat of filming in Croatia made the costume practically an oven. Therefore, the costumers had to go back and strip out all but the outer layer of armor, replacing the rest with padding. The set location in Dubrovnik, Croatia, for the duel between Oberyn and Gregor is an old 1980s hotel called the Belvedere. It was bombed out during the breakup of Yugoslavia and left abandoned for over 20 years. The set dressers had to clean up a large amount of graffiti in the ruins. In the former episode Mockingbird, Bronn said about the mountain, "Maybe I could take him, dance around until he's so tired of hacking at me, he dropped his sword. Gonna want his piece somehow, but one misstep, and I'm dead." Unknowingly, Bronn accurately predicted how the duel between Oberyn and the mountain would occur. Oberyn is confused to wear the mountain out by moving around him, attacking with quick jabs, until the mountain was on his back without a sword. However, Oberyn made a misstep by stepping too close to his opponent before delivering the final blow, and that cost his life. Mm-hmm. So overall, I think this episode is just pretty darn brutal, especially what happened to especially what happened to Oberyn. So, yeah. So overall, I give The Mountain and the Viper 4 Iron Thrones out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in more as we take a look at the next episode, The Watchers on the Wall. So, until then, remember everyone, winter is coming.